We hold the world ransom for $100 billion.
We're gonna play football. Yippee!
I want to be good. 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 Very good.
What in the wide, wide world of sports is going on here?
The CFB on OSG with your host, the Online Sports Guys.
Thank you, Tommy Palmer, as always. Welcome to another round of the CFB with OSG, the OSG on CFB. It is the review, choice D, all the above. Take all your topics, throw them into one particular show that comes out at the beginning of the week, not to be confused with the midweek debrief or the rivalry show that we do here on the OSG Sports app. It is Brother Phil and Brother Nelly here discussing shakeups and a lot of folks who think that things might go one way or another, or they'd like things to go one way or another. Just a lot of folks talking about things here as we hit July.
And before we get into all that stuff, though, I want to add that Brother Wilkie's not with us this week.
Yeah.
He let us know that he's got something a little special planned here to get us through the last home stretch here of the summer months. A special show that he's putting together with Corey McCartney and Twittered Anthony about the Blue Bud. The
Blue Buds?
Yes, the blue blood programs of college football, the old traditional powerhouses of years gone by who struggled over the last decade or two, and are trying to find their way and become relevant, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it again.
Yeah. Kind
of an interesting subject and something for those of you who have followed college football for some time should really tune into. It's going to be a series of shows about a couple of the different programs where they go take a deep dive and talk to some of the alumni and people involved with the programs. Some really, really good content and some interesting stuff. I really suggest you stay tuned to OSG Sports on social media, on Twitter and on Facebook, and of course on our phone app, where you can find out when this show drops. He should be starting to drop some of these shows over the course of this week. Great stuff, great content. And now I'm done with the gratuitous early self-promotion. Let's get on with the review.
Let's get on with the review. For those watching on the TV side, this is what the OSG Sports app looks like on the Android side. Phil has the iOS version. And anytime there's a new show that drops, you are notified as such, so set your notifications appropriately. You get a note. You get a vibration or something, and they'll let you know that there's a new show up. All right. Folks with money like to talk.
Yes.
And especially when they like to steer that money in certain directions towards certain schools and the ones that they feel they have influence and power over. And Brother Wilkie let us know about two particular stories, and the first one is near and dear to his heart. John Wall Street has been notified that UCLA mega donor Casey Wasserman, he formerly the owner of the LA Avengers and Arena Football and all those other kinds of things that he wanted to do as an owner,
Guy with money.
Yes, guy with money, underline. And according to John Wall Street, here's the quote, is advising the school not to re-up with the Pac-12 beyond the conference's existing grant of rights agreement, which expires in 2023. He's trying to steer his alma mater to the ACC, where Wasserman serves as an advisor. But the big hook in all of this for me is like, okay, so I guess you're going to be the PCC division of the ACC. But for the non-revenue sports, what you're doing is you're sending all of them from one end of the country to the other and creating scheduling and budgetary nightmares for your non-revenue sports. And the Big 12 makes more sense, something like that, where you can get a larger piece of a pie. But none of this really makes sense. It's, once again, gentlemen who have rather large wallets kind of sitting here and going like, see, this is my wallet, and you'll see how much money flies out of it for those of you on the TV side. Not a lot of money flying out of that wallet right there. Casey Wasserman, when he does that to his wallet, a lot more money flies out of it than it does mine. So Casey Wasserman wants UCLA to go to the ACC. Good luck on that one.
Never happen. File that under things that would never happen. There's no reason or even way to even justify doing something like that. I will qualify that by saying the Pac-12's got some problems.
Yes.
Some big problems. And they've got some, we talked at the beginning about Brother Wilkie promoting some of the blue blood programs of college athletics that have struggled over the last decade or two, and UCLA certainly would be one of those. And they're struggling to gain relevance in a Pac-12 conference that's kind of starting to lag a little bit behind their Power 5 brethren, be it for logistical reasons, be it the fact that they're just kind of poorly run, and a whole variety of other things. There's no universe where this makes any sense for the reasons you just entailed.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, I get you want to get a bigger paycheck from TV. ESPN's going to pay the ACC a good amount of money, more money than the Pac-12 school. Pac-12 is paying their schools for TV rights fees. But that's not really enough to be able to justify having the women's soccer team having to travel to the East Coast to play pretty much all their games, to have their baseball team, to have any number of sports having to travel all the way across the U.S. to get over to the ACC, because the ACC doesn't have anything even remotely close to them. I mean, who's the farthest west out of all the teams in the ACC that you could think of offhand?
Notre Dame.
Yeah, Notre Dame or Louisville.
Yeah, Notre Dame, which is basically Chicago.
Yeah, or Louisville, which is in Kentucky.
Yeah.
Neither of which scream West Coast.
No.
I mean, if you could garner a couple of partners to do this, we might have a different conversation. But to do it as a solo act, UCLA doesn't have enough brand cachet at this point in time to be able to pull off something like that. I mean, if you get USC and Stanford and Cal maybe to go in on it, yeah, I can see a world where that would happen in today's compressed universe where everybody's kind of trying to scrunch into one really big conference.
Yes.
But I think at the end of the day, maybe not now, maybe not 10 years from now, maybe not 20 years from now, you're going to see the conference system as it currently exists is going to go away.
Yes. I'm waiting for the 21st century version of the CFA to come back, so you have all of those blue bloods in one group, and they'll divide themselves up however they want to divide themselves, 4 regions, and then everybody's thrown together in the same pile, and you might have the top 48 teams, regardless of where they are now, in 4 12-team divisions, playing themselves into conference games and getting either the top 36 or whatever into the bowl structure and doing whatever.
But the whole idea of a school going rogue like that,
No,
that's not going to happen. And certainly if it would happen, UCLA is not going to be the school to do it.
Yeah. And it's going to be probably someone who's another independent or someone who really just wants to break off and break clean. And speaking of the Pac-12, one former Big 12 athletic director thinks that there's going to be a strategic formation of an alliance or some kind of handshake agreement. So it'd be like playing Risk and figuring out who your partner is at the table. Big 12, Pac-12 on Tier 1 rights. Very, very likely that this is happening. And once again, this is just a former Big 12 AD saying this. But with the Big 12 and Pac-12 right over here, you're looking 24 schools, you're looking for time zones, you're getting leverage when it comes to games and showing them at decent times and having something that's shown pretty much all across the board. And you could have double header, triple header, quadruple header with this structure. 12-3, 6-9, or 12-3, 37 and 10-30, and you could have a day of football every single week on whatever platform this would be.
And that makes much more sense. I'm not saying it's going to happen, although I suspect, like I just said, or literally within the last couple of minutes, eventually something like this is going to happen, and you're going to see the one big league broken up into a bunch of different divisions as opposed to conference play, which they currently have now. But in a lot of ways, those two conferences have a lot of things that match up really, really well. It balances out some weaknesses, and particularly with the Big 12, because the Big 12 is actually only the Big 8 or 9?
Yeah. Big 12-10.
Yeah, the Big 12-10, and then the Pac-12 14. It still gives you basically a round number that could do work scheduling wise, and really, if you do that, it covers most of your season. Most of your games are spoken for. You play one team play all your conference games, and then you play your Big 12 games, and that pretty much takes care of your season. It makes the scheduling, it makes the travel, it makes the cost sharing. It makes a lot of sense on a lot of levels. Whether it actually, like I said, whether it actually happens or not is a different issue, because we kind of currently live in a universe where change doesn't necessarily happen at a particularly fast pace when it comes to anything.
Yes.
Particularly if you're talking about a traditional system that's such as college football that's run the way it's run for the last, 120 years?
Sounds good.
Something like that. Just the change the game's undergone in the last 10 years has been earth-shaking. I can't imagine this step being taken just yet. But the flip side is, in order to take on the Big Ten, the SEC, and now really the ACC in terms of what they're bringing in revenue, Big 12, Pac-12, you're talking about the little sisters there. The little sisters can combine up to make one big sister. And all of a sudden, they got a much bigger seat at the table.
Yeah. When you can go college football Voltron like that, that definitely does make things a lot better for you. And someone who is trying to figure life out right now, at least I think they've got life figured out, except for what they're going to do with their football program. And it's life in the act with UConn. And there is a discussion that the American said, yeah, we're cool with 11 teams. We're not going to add another one. And UConn has now officially started to fill in their football schedule with FCS bows, because a lot of folks don't want to add another program because they get nice even numbers, and UConn's kind of hanging out on the side. And they have agreed to contracts with Central Connecticut and Lafayette in 2022, 2025, 2023, and 2026. All four guarantees cost UConn less than $300,000 apiece, and the contracts were executed fairly regularly. And as of right now, because of the schedule going away in the American, UConn only has 15 games scheduled for the years 2020 through 2024. They got to come up with 45 games to fill out their schedules at a bare minimum for those 20, 21, 22, 5 years. So you got to come up with 9 games there, bud.
Yeah, and we talked last week quite a bit about this, and then you guys kind of went through it again during the week. It's clear what UConn's trying to do, and that's go back to their basketball roots. If you remember, not too long ago, more for people our age, I suppose, than anybody else, UConn was considered a basketball school, and nobody really even talked about football. They played an FCS-type schedule, and they never really competed that hard or at that high of a level trying to compete with the Power 5 schools. They had their 1 year of brilliance in 2010 and proceeded to be the team that's lost the biggest amount of money on a bowl game, probably in bowl game history, when they owed the Fiesta Bowl $1.4 million for not being able to sell tickets at a game across the country. But yeah, I think you're seeing the first, well, maybe not the first, but probably the biggest name of the programs to kind of backpedal a little bit and say, wait a minute, maybe it's not worth it to us to try to compete with big guys and spend 7 figures per season on college football trying to keep up when we can't. There's just no way for us to do it. It's a realistic view, and I think it's the view we were just talking at the beginning of the show. We talked a lot about how the rich are trying to get richer. They're doing it at the expense of the poor, who are basically getting poorer, and you're seeing that divide in college football just kind of growing almost on a daily basis. This couldn't exemplify that any better.
Andy Katz, early last week, basically said UConn is not giving up on UConn football. The plan will be to go independent in 2020 and 2021, when the rest of the sports move to the Big East. The hope is that the football team can schedule reasonably well, which, as we just said, they're having issues doing that from 2020 to 2024. And they can keep their existing Power 5 home and homes and get a few guarantees to be bowl eligible and just do things one way or another. And they've got a very nice spanking new locker room, which is very, very shiny, but not a whole lot of teams are going to be engaged in checking that stuff out at Rentschler Field. The statement from American Commissioner Mike Oresco was the sum total of 2 paragraphs, which basically masqueraded as 2 sentences. The University of Connecticut has announced its withdrawal from the American Athletic Conference. We wish UConn well. End of first paragraph. We will next address the exit procedure mandated by our conference bylaws. Our conference will continue to move forward in pursuit of its national goals in football, men's and women's basketball, and Olympic sports. I think that was basically Mike Oresco and the Americans' way of saying, don't let the door hit you in the posterior on the way out the door.
And pay demand.
Pay demand exit fee.
All $10 million of it.
Pay demand.
I'm more interested to see the ripple effect of this. Or
because UConn is looking like right now all they're going to be able to do is go independent. How much of a ripple will there be? Because everyone that are Go 5 seem to be standing pat with their even numbers, except for the American, who's going to stay at 11. And I mean, unless they pull in somebody like Wilkie and I were talking about last week to get to that even number, then you'll have other Go 5s try to fill in and steal from other Go 5s and stuff like that.
I think, and I may be completely off base here because I'm thinking logically, that it paints a scenario that a lot of Go 5 athletic directors and really school presidents have to look at, because you're looking at some of these smaller schools that are much like UConn hemorrhaging money. And there's only so much hemorrhaging you can do before you got to pay the piper. And if you're losing $2 million a season trying to play with the big boys, a game you can't win, no matter how hard you try, what's the point in doing it? And somebody's got to be that lead example that says, hey, we realize we'd like to keep a competitive football program, but we can't compete at the level we've been trying to compete at.
Idaho did it.
I think it's long since been time for that to do. How many state legislatures can put up with schools losing, like in the case of UConn, the football program alone losing almost $10 million a year, never mind the athletic department itself with nearly $40 million in the red. I mean, there's only so much of that you can take. And we're talking economics and kind of boring stuff here. But really, at the end of the day, I've said it a million times and I'll say it 1,000,001. College football is a game of the haves and the have-nots. Mm-hmm. And if you're not a Power 5 school that doesn't have a huge TV deal and is being supplemented by that deal in your conference, you can't stay viable over the long haul. It's just not possible.
I think if you as a school in a group of 5, or as we refer to on the show, Go 5 conferences, if you understand your sphere of influence, don't overextend yourself and make yourself viable within your footprint, and then figure out ways to make yourself, you poke your head above the waterline nationally, occasionally with a Sports Center top 10 or something like that draws interest. As long as you can sit there and say, all right, we're just going to be ourselves and, you know, y'all be cool. We're going to be all right the way that we are. I mean, if you think about a lot of the Go Fives, if you think about UCF, if you think about a USF within the American, if you think of a Georgia Southern in Statesboro, Georgia, who did tremendously well at the 1AA level, establishing an identity, and then decided that they wanted to go into the Sun Belt. You have teams in the MAC who, in the southeastern United States, may not move the meter, but they still have coaches and recruiters who come down, take the talent, and send them and bring them back up north because they know where they're going. But they're not overextending themselves financially to put a product on the field. Eastern Michigan was about as close as we got to that, but they seem to have turned things around.
How do you sell a program based on the knowledge, A, you'll never ever get to win the national championship or compete for it, and B, the best you're going to be able to do is go to a second or a third tier bowl game at best if you win your conference championship? That's what you're having to sell. And
Sell locally.
Why would you spend $5 to $10 million on an operating budget to try to keep up with the Tennessees and the Georgias and all these SEC schools that are breaking in $40 million a year just from TV? Why would you try to compete with that?
You have some folks who really haven't quite understood realism 101 when it comes to big boy economics. And I think that if you can control things in your local sphere of influence, make your name that way, make your money that way. If you turn yourself break even, great. I think that's what you're looking for. Don't turn it into something that's just a big boy toy where you're hemorrhaging 8 figures a year.
And at the end of the day, I think it goes back to what I said, too, about the Power 5 schools breaking off and doing their own thing and let everybody else do their own thing. I mean, it's fair, it's equitable, it works out for everybody's best interest, but hey, that's just my opinion. Why don't we throw it to break here? We've talked for a long time.
What he said. So when we come back, it's going to be the odds and ends in the kitchen sink. And a coach got indicted, and a lot of folks might remember who this coach actually is. And there was a lot of indictments and a lot of charges that came down on one coach. One quarterback is not going to be throwing a whole lot anytime soon. One school that we talk about in the Power 5 has generated a lot of money in the last 6 years from all of its boosters. Yes, and portaling. What would our show be without portaling?
Scotty, beam me up.
He's at OSG Phil. I'm at OSG Nelson. This is at OSG Sports and the College Football Review. We'll be back in 2 and 2.
Everybody buckle up. Buckle up.
Let's go.
Buckle up.
Can we go to the store? Mom,
buckle
can we get
up.
some ice cream?
Everybody, buckle up.
A lot goes on in the car, but you're in control. So only move when you hear the click that says they're buckled in. Never give up until they buckle up. Learn more at safercar.gov/kidsbuckleup. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Soccer Down Here is sponsored by Apolinski & Associates, LLC, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience. Call Steve Apolinski at 518-350-4231 or email him at steve@aa-legal.com if you need help with a wrongful death or serious injury matter. Steve Apolinski is rated one of the top 100 trial attorneys in Georgia, recognized as Legal Elite by Georgia Trend magazine for being one of the most effective lawyers in Georgia.
Welcome back to The Dog Show. Up next, we have Satchmo. Satchmo is a member of the Shelter Pet Group.
That's right, a group known especially for their couch-snuggling, ball-chasing, face-licking, and, of course, companionship. Now, let's see him in action.
Look how he makes eye contact with his person.
That's actually known as the treat stare.
How intuitive, and now he appears to be excitedly turning in circles.
Ah, the happy dance so common with this group.
But really, the best way to know an amazing shelter pet like Satchmo is to meet one.
Visit theshelterpetproject.org today. Adopt.
Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
If you want to scale a mountain, buy boots. If you want to turn your crush into something more, say hi. At Country Financial, we know protecting the things you love and preparing for tomorrow start with simple steps. So we help you take small steps today with insurance and financial services that can have a big impact on your family's future.
For all your home, auto, and life insurance needs, call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871.
Just a flesh wound. Look, stop that! Chicken! Chicken! Look, I'll have your leg!
Phil's in business now with his Go 5 lid from Georgia Southern. For those of you watching on the visual side, I'm at OSG Nelson. He's at OSG Phil. He is a graduate of Georgia Southern University in the borough, and they've got some of the most talented folks in the Go 5s going at it this year. And we'll obviously be getting into previews with that. One other note before we go, reminder, later on in the week, because Brother Wilkie is going to be on the road, they're going to put some stuff together when it comes to content and other shows on the platform. Blue Blood programs trying to get on the road to recovery. So it's going to be Brother Wilkie. It's going to be Twittered Anthony. Corey McCartney is going to be dropping by. And it's going to be Nebraska, Florida State. Those are the two that are going to be coming up this week for the Nebraska show. Corey came in. Lars Anderson is the guest, promoting his book, Chasing the Bear, being released in September.
Former Sports Illustrated writer.
Correct, and now he's a teacher. And for the Florida State show, Anthony was in, and friend of the network, Tom Block, safe to say one of my proteges, gets to hang out with Twittered Anthony and Wilkie as they're talking about Florida State. So debriefing Blue Bloods happens Monday with Nebraska, Wednesday with Florida State here on the platform. So like, subscribe, download the app if you haven't done so. iOS and Android available for that.
Scotty, beam me up.
And what is a week without portaling as we start the B block? You had figured, Phil, that there were going to be some restrictions, which I still think is pretty silly. But nevertheless, they're adjusting the guidelines, the NCAA, for immediate eligibility.
Yeah, they decided, the Division I Council has decided that, among other things, the language in the way that the portal procedure is going to have a few more curveballs in it. Never mind the fact that you can only do it. You may not be able to do it more than once here in the near future.
Whatever. Yeah,
they now want the schools to disclose the reason why the young athlete will be transferring from their school to somewhere else.
Of course.
They want to know what the documented, extenuated, extraordinary, and mitigating circumstances outside of the student's control would be in order to approve the waiver.
It's a lot of big words.
A lot of big words. I get it. I think it's not a bad step. I mean, the whole premise of guys like Austin Fields basically just saying they don't want to compete anymore. I'm going
peace out.
I'm taking my talent somewhere else, without a legitimate, really good reason for it. I think that just a little bit of a excessive use of said rule. I'm all for college players being able to transfer if they really, really want to once. I mean, college coaches are able to leave, pretty much come and go as they please, despite the writers attached to their contracts. So why not let the players do it?
Yeah.
But at the same time, give me a legitimate reason. You've got players who have had legitimate reasons and have had their requests rejected.
I know.
But they weren't the high-profile quarterbacks. They weren't the guys who get all the attention, make all the people go, "Oh, look at him, he's special." Yeah. And that's a problem. The rule hasn't been applied evenly. It hasn't been applied uniformly to everybody, and they need to balance that. To the NCAA's credit, they at least recognize that the system may not necessarily have worked the way they had intended it to. It was the first year out of the blocks. So they're going to try an adjustment for year two. The question to you is it going to work?
For me, and required reading in this goes to Dan Wolken of USA Today and Ben Kercheval over at CBS Sports. A couple of different points. One made by Wolken. The previous guidelines allowed waivers to be granted for, and I'm going to use air quotes, which will work only on the video side, egregious behavior by a staff member or student at the previous institution, end quote, as long as the previous school did not oppose the waiver, giving the committee a fairly broad window to view those claims. The updated version says waivers should be granted for documented cases where the athlete was a victim of, quote, physical assault or abuse, questioning of sexually inappropriate behavior, racial abuse, religious discrimination, questioning of sexuality by a staff member or student of the previous institution, end quote. The definition isn't limited to those areas. And then Michael Felder, who's at In the Bleachers on Twitter, a tremendous read with great opinions, says that having that kind of letter doesn't necessarily benefit the player all that much. Michael basically says, what school's AD is going to write a letter that says, hey, yeah, our staff processed Jimmy out of the program? Are we asking more of the 17 to 22-year-olds in terms of documentation than of the schools and adults, especially if you're trying to talk about abuse, beaten up by a scout or a coach? He's not in the two deep. Is the fact that you were not in the two deep, is that abuse by a coach? All these different things. Michael Felder brought up some really great points in his analysis of it. I still think that, to your point, when a coach jets, the players ought to jet, because as you well know, when you're working for a new boss, sometimes a new boss just doesn't like you. Wants to bring in his own guys, and
That's
could be
what it all boils down to.
Yeah, you could be just sitting there and going, I'm just kind of parked here, and it's not benefiting me one way or the other with the new boss. I feel like I should be able to get out of town. That I completely agree with. I understand the notion of it being complete and total free agency, where you have quarterbacks who either don't want to compete or feel like they would have to compete for a job that they thought was theirs in the first place. I'd love for that to work in the real world. Yeah. I'd love for that to be able to be found out in the real world, where you get a job, then you sit there and you say, yeah, I was supposed to have this job, but now I have to prove my worth at this job every day, instead of just kind of, you're going to have that cough addressed, man. That's some, but it's just, if you think about it, if you transfer it into the real world idea, if you portal these ideas and put them in real world situations, 9 times out of 10, this stuff isn't going to wash. It's athletics. I would just as soon turn free agency, just go Wild West. And I know that probably Justin Fields has turned into something akin to Kurt Flood in this situation, but I'm kind of over portaling just on general premise because of all the kids going. So I think that the more the NCAA sits there and wants to do something, I think the worse they try to make it unintentionally when they think they're trying to better the situation. So I'm just like, look, if you don't want to be at this job, if you don't want to be in the widget factory helping us make the best widgets on the planet, if you don't want to help us build the best cars and people want to buy them, if you don't want to be the best mechanic and fix cars when they break down so people can continue to come back to you, and you want to go someplace where you just are going to feel more comfortable, try doing that in the real world.
Yeah, it happens, but it's not so easy.
Nope.
What else we got going on here? Lots of stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I thought this was interesting, and I know that we've got stuff about things like Tua Tagovailoa and Clemson getting a boatload of money over the last 6 years, $360 million. I mean, that's donations, which is just staggering to me. But everybody's got their own joke for what IPTAY stands for. It's on the Clemson campus. It's I pay 10 a year. That's the acronym that's been given on the good side. On the bad side,
getting a bargain these days.
Yeah, I pay them all year is probably more accurate when it comes to things these days. If you're not at Clemson, okay. You remember Last Chance U with the friend of the platform, Drew Jubera?
Right.
Okay. Did you see it last season when they went to Independence Community College? Okay.
I did not. I've gotten away from it.
Okay. Jason Brown was the head coach at Independence Community College last year. He's now the former coach at ICC. He was indicted on 10 charges late last week. 8 of those indictments were for felonies, 4 for blackmail, 4 for identity theft, 2 were for criminal false communication. According to a story published by one of the newspapers, the coach allegedly victimized the newspapers. He sent a cease and desist email to a local newspaper there shortly after the paper published an editorial regarding a fight between his team at ICC and Garden City Community College. The coach allegedly posed as an attorney from the Cochran law firm in California.
Oh, God.
To send the letter for cease and desist.
Acting! Brilliant! Thank you! Thank you!
And he's obviously denying all of it, but he's no longer the head coach at ICC. So required reading goes to the Parsons Sun newspaper for the details, but I believe that Jason Brown is now in what they refer to as a heap of trouble.
Yeah, and he probably should be, if for no other reason, because he may be one of the 10 dumbest people on the planet.
Let's see. Philip Fulmer is open to playing a football game in Memphis.
But he won't walk there.
Yeah, and he won't. He's not really looking forward to playing Memphis themselves in Memphis. He's like, yeah, I'll play a football game in Memphis. May not just be against Memphis. So I thought that was rather intriguing. Injury has knocked Tua Tagovailoa out of the Manning Passing Academy, so I'm guessing he's going to be on the shelf until early August. Let's see. So it was high ankle sprain in the postseason. Multiple media reports and describe it as a minor hamstring injury, tweaked hamstring, or a slight hamstring injury. So he is done at the Manning Passing Academy. No Trevor Lawrence in the media session. Trevor arrived late to camp, will not be speaking to the media, but you will not be seeing Tua Tagovailoa because of a slight hamstring injury when it comes to what's going on with the Manning Academy. More blotter real quick from John Taylor at College Football Talk. Louisville Courier-Journal would be your required reading here. Louisville football staffer Courtney Braswell arrested earlier this month on one count of theft of properly extradited to Chattanooga, Tennessee, where the crime was allegedly committed. Alleged that Courtney Braswell stole more than $2,000 ticketed for a high school at which he worked at the time. Subsequently indicted by a grand jury in Hamilton County, Tennessee, following an investigation into the theft allegations. High school coach, and I remember him when he was at Ridgeland High, and he spent 2 years at Chattanooga Central. Tennessee Comptroller's Office found Braswell pocketed at least $2,480 in payments he received from two semi-pro football teams that had paid to use Chattanooga Central's field for their home games, according to the press release. Scott Satterfield is aware of the situation. What else is on your mind when it comes to everything in college football?
I think we've covered pretty much all the bases there. I mean, the countdown clock's on. We're 7-8 weeks away from the season starting.
Yeah.
Roughly as we sit here and record this, we're inside the 2-month countdown.
Yay!
The first game's kicking off August 24th. We got a load of stuff to come ahead here in the next few weeks to kind of build up to that.
Yes.
We talked earlier about the Blue Blood show that Wilkie's producing. Really looking forward to hearing that.
This week.
Couple of episodes dropping this week. Couple more episodes hopefully in the very, very near future. Can't wait to hear what he's got to say about that. Love to hear about what happened to some of these older programs that just all of a sudden kind of went off the radar.
Yes.
We've got shows galore.
We have stuff. Okay, let me do the rundown real quick. Also, Terry Bradshaw says that Texas starting QB Sam Ehlinger ain't that good. Direct quote.
Yeah, what has Sam Ehlinger done to people lately? All of a sudden, last week it was Baker Mayfield piling up on him. This week it's Terry Bradshaw for no particular reason.
I do not know, and it's just. Yeah, exactly. So, all right. So let me see if I can get this. OSG Sports, Facebook, Twitter. Let's see. You on Twitter at OSG Phil. I'm on Twitter at OSG Nelson. Like, friend, be a part of the conversation with Jay Wilkerson 16, AP_Goldman 85 on Twitter. TheOnlineSportsGuys.com for all the news that you feel compelled to write about on a weekly, if not daily basis. And also on the YouTube side of things, where you get to see me and Phil try to stifle belches on the air while we're trying to do this particular show. So you get to see the video version and all of the gear that we decide to wear on the air for one reason or another, and you get to see what I'm drinking my caffeine out of on a weekly basis as well. This week it's Texas A&M, straight from Kyle Field, so pick that up there, and that's why that is there. Giles County, Tennessee, being referenced here by the Bobcats. One final thing, required reading, Ben Fredrickson's column in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, stltoday.com, as Gary Pinkel from the University.
Yeah, that was the one that I couldn't think of.
Yeah, Gary Pinkel and his fight with non-Hodgkin lymphoma. now his treatments have resumed. So Ben Fred's reading in the column about what Coach is trying to fight through there. Go to stltoday.com in the Ben Fred section.
What he's doing to help bring awareness and get people in the community to be aware of what's going on is to help themselves too is even the more important message out of that.
Yeah, so go to Ben Fred's column at stltoday.com. Thanks to you for finding that one and putting that one in the queue. What else do we need to talk about?
I think that's pretty much it.
All right.
Thanks for sticking around, everybody. We've talked a long time.
We have.
This show will be dropping on a Monday as they normally do. I'm adding my own sound effects. Make sure you stay tuned throughout the week. Get the phone app.
Yes,
it's
get the
free.
phone app.
It will give you access to all of our content, college football stuff galore, and of course, your favorite subject, soccer.
Oh, I thought you were going to say portal.
No. Your other favorite subject. Soccer.
Well, that's the other app. We have two apps associated with the network here, both iOS and Android. For those watching on the TV side, you've got the OSG Sports version for Android right there as I'm showing it, and then the Soccer Down Here side of things. Jason Longshore and I and Jared Smith and a bunch of folks, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 11 on Spreaker and on the SDH app. SoccerDownHere.net, a bunch of other things in a bunch of other places. So if you like soccer, it's on one aisle. If it's everything else, it's on the other aisle. So OSG Sports, Soccer Down Here. Download both apps. It's free, so it's all good, and you get like vibrations and notifications when we do new stuff.
Oh, I don't want to know about your vibrations.
I don't want to know about yours either, son.
Time to say goodbye, John.
Goodbye, John.
Over? Did you say over? Nothing is over until we decide it is. Was it over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor? Hell no!
German? Forget it, he's rolling.
And it ain't over